been quite a while since we've done a last cam standing showdown, but now the LG G7 ThinQ is here to fight for the crown, along with the OnePlus 6 and Sony Xperia XZ2. They'll battle our current smartphone camera champ, Huawei's P20 Pro. So let's get started. Last Cam Standing is PC World's video series that determines the best phone camera for still images in a King of the Hill style battle. Whichever phone wins moves on to face the next major smartphone release, so subscribe to see the journey unfold. First up, let's check out the fighters. By now you should be familiar with the technical prowess of Huawei's P20 Pro, our current champ. And please excuse the crackback, I clumsily dropped camera equipment on it. Butterfingers at him here. Nevertheless, the damage had no effect on the 3 Leica branded cameras and custom processing that propelled the P20 Pro to the top spot in the last round. The G7 ThinQ, meanwhile, continues to use a secondary wide-angle camera, a track LG is known for. And like the G6, which dominated our tests during 2017, the G7 is also packed with powerful camera features like the AI cam and night mode. But will it be enough to take down the P20 Pro? We'll see. Next up is the OnePlus 6, and even though it's a mid-range phone, its camera is celebrated as an improvement over the 5T that competed earlier this year. And finally, we have the Sony Xperia XZ2. Sony brings only a single camera to the battle, but the company does have very advanced sensor technology, so we'll see how far that takes them in the showdown. As always, our tests are broken into 4 categories: color, clarity, exposure, and extra features. Each phone is tested using its default camera, just as it was configured out of the box. The P20 Pro's Master AI feature is on by default and will be marked accordingly, but in most cases a second photo is taken with the suggestion dismissed. Now let's get to the results of the battle. First up is color, and here we're looking for accurate reproduction and white balance. This first shot in my house displays various degrees of warmth, with the OnePlus being the coolest and the XZ2 the warmest. The color temperature affects the rest of the scene, most obviously on the fiddle leaf fig tree. In this case, the P20 Pro is the most accurate in terms of color temperature. Here in the garage, the first thing to notice is the blazing yellow of the lights in the OnePlus's shot. It's very distinct and washes the entire ceiling in a nasty mustard color. But the colors on the P20 Pro shot are a bit more muted than what's in the Sony and LG photos. And of course, when the Master AI offers a suggestion on the P20 Pro, it's usually some form of high contrast filter with very saturated colors. This last shot of a door offers an interesting look at saturation. Both the P20 Pro and the XZ2 are natural, if a bit muted, while the G7 and OnePlus 6 are bright and punchy. In this case, the P20 Pro was once again the closest to accurate. Now, I found a weird problem with the G7 over the course of using it. Every once in a while, it would horribly miscalculate the white balance, resulting in a completely unusable shot. In all my time camera testing, I've never seen something like this, and it's a real letdown from LG. Based off of this problem alone, I can't even consider the G7 in contention for a color win. The P20 Pro, meanwhile, has been improved through patches since our last test and offers the most pleasing colors and accurate white balance of the bunch. So the color category goes to Huawei's P20 Pro. Next up is clarity. This test digs into the sharpness of each image in various lighting scenarios. First up is a beautiful brick wall. Fully zoomed out, the P20 Pro and XZ2 seem to have the sharpest cameras of the bunch, but zooming in reveals the sheer power of that 40 megapixel sensor in the P20 Pro. I'll note that Huawei uses pixel binning to produce a 10 megapixel image by default, but it's still damn impressive and smokes the competition. Zooming in on this shot down the railroad tracks bears the same results. But I have to give it to the OnePlus and Sony phones, as they still deliver quite a bit of detail in the skyline. As for LG, its cameras are known for a tendency to oversharpen. Mix that in with the aggressive noise reduction, and you have a losing formula. Moving into a dark garage really puts these phones to the test, and at such low light the images start to fall apart in specific ways. Honestly though, I'm surprised by how well the OnePlus's photo was able to hold up under scrutiny. There is some noise present compared to the P20 Pro's version, but a little bit of noise never hurt anyone. Unfortunately, the G7 shot is the worst of the bunch and lacks detail on the bricks. And while the XZ2's photo isn't quite as bad, there's just too much chroma noise for my taste. We head into one of the darkest spots in the garage and see that the P20 Pro just seals the deal here. Not only is it the sharpest, it's also the most color accurate, which is super impressive at such low light. So it's hard to argue with the P20 Pro's ability to retain such detail in every lighting scenario. And even though the OnePlus 6 surprised me a few times, the clarity category easily goes to the Huawei P20 Pro. The third category is exposure, where I'll focus on the dynamic range of each camera and how they expose for a scene. Right out of the gate, we can see that LG still has one of the best dynamic ranges out of all smartphones. But what do I mean by best? I mean that LG's processing does a great job of keeping enough exposure information in both the brightest parts of the image and the darkest. In this street scene, we can see that the clouds in the XZ2's image are blowing out, and the darkest parts are losing detail. The same thing happens here at the train station. The skylight is completely blown out in the XZ2 image, leaving no information for anyone to use in editing. Yes, the G7's images are flatter and have less pop because of it, but it's easier to add pop in than take it out. And as a photo editor, I like having that control. The G7 isn't perfect in this category though. Here the P20 Pro has way more information in the wood, while still keeping the white parts of the building exposed properly. But like the Google Pixel 2 that came before it, the P20 Pro can tend to feel overprocessed. Now if I were looking for a camera that had the best compromise of dynamic range and a contrasty image, I'd lean towards the OnePlus 6. Like the G7, it typically exposed well for complex scenes, but had more contrast present, making it an image that could be used with minimal editing. But I prefer to have more information than not enough when it comes to dynamic range. This way I can make more decisions in post-production. In the age of strong HDR and multi-image processing, all of these phones actually handle themselves pretty well. But it's nice to see a lot of dynamic range present in the G7's photos, something that I really appreciated about the G6 from last year. So the LG G7 ThinQ wins the exposure category. The fourth and final category looks at extra features. Here I'll specifically be going over the hardware and software options that set each camera experience apart. One of the standout features in the G7 and P20 Pro is the inclusion of a night mode. In LG's case, it uses pixel binning to gather more light, which it does, but at the expense of generating only a 4 megapixel image. It's just not as good as Huawei's version, which takes a series of photos for around 4 seconds and stitches them together to produce amazing results. It's such a useful feature that I hope comes to more phones. Moving on to the secondary cameras, things get real weird. The XZ2 doesn't have one. The OnePlus 6 has one, but it's primarily used for enabling portrait mode. The G7 has a super wide-angle lens, and the P20 Pro has 3 total cameras, so it really comes down to LG and Huawei's approach. The P20 Pro absolutely destroys all the other phones when zoomed in using the second lens. And its monochrome sensor takes beautiful black and white photos on top of adding more detail to color photos. Nonetheless, I just found myself using the wide-angle lens of the G7 way more than the P20 Pro's telephoto lens. LG's wide-angle allows me to get shots that I never could on another phone, and its upgraded lens and sensor minimizes the horrible barrel distortion and color fringing of past LG phones. When it comes to the user experience of each phone's default camera app, there isn't a clear frontrunner. LG's app isn't as fun and intuitive as it once was, and Huawei's tries to mimic Apple's interface a bit too much. Sony's app is very utilitarian, and OnePlus's isn't intuitive and is only just a step above stock Android. Ultimately, I lean towards favoring the P20 Pro's app because of the sheer breadth of features available, and luckily a patch has improved the speed of switching modes. While I absolutely love using the super wide lens on the G7, that's really the only thing LG has going for it over the other phones. Huawei just offers too many useful features in a fast and smooth package, along with 3 practical cameras. So the Huawei P20 Pro wins the extra features category. And now it's time to crown a winner. I must say that even though this series is about finding the best smartphone camera in the world, I would have to place the OnePlus 6 in the category of best mid-range camera in the world. I'm super impressed by the improvements OnePlus has implemented over the 5T and look forward to further refinements. Of course, this isn't a mid-range camera battle, it's about choosing the best of the best. And here, the Huawei P20 Pro retains its title. Using the P20 Pro to take photos is a treat, whether you're a seasoned photographer like me or a casual snapper who posts to Instagram. The sheer specs and power on display in this phone are undeniable, and the Master AI is a non-invasive tool that can add that special pizzazz to a photo if you want it. If you must have the best smartphone camera in your pocket right now, then you won't be disappointed with the P20 Pro. But of course, Samsung will be releasing the Note 9 soon, so it'll get another shot at the title. Be sure to let me know what you think of the results, and please subscribe so you don't miss the next matchup.